On this episode of Les Roll Radio, we give our tips for blue belts. This is Les Roll Radio, a combat sports podcast. I'm Kelly Shennicky.
And I'm Andrea Shennicky. Welcome to the podcast. Hello.
Hi. Let's start with a really quick camp update because camp's coming up in less than 3 months.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah. So we are very close to sold out, like 84-85% sold out. We only have a handful of spots left. Again, just a reminder, it is there's a suggested registration fee, but it is a pay what you can thing. So please do not let cost be a reason that you don't come. There are 10 hours of seminars, right, altogether. 5 sessions, 2 hours each over the course of the weekend. There are super fights, open mats. It's a very big bang for your buck in terms of what you get. So we hope to see you there if you're a member of the community.
Yes, very much so.
Another note, we are currently looking at our engagement with social media and what we feel is most ethical and right. And we're not immediately leaving Meta platforms, but I think we at least want to start to reduce our engagement on them. And so we're playing around with that currently. We have set up a Discord.
Yes.
And as of now, it's like mostly our friends on it. But I think by the time this episode comes out, we'll be ready to post that. It is not just for people coming to camp. It is not just for queer grapplers. It is for the podcast. So if you're a fan of the podcast at all, you should join. We've already talked to some of our black belt friends about posting technique videos. So that's really exciting. I'm not sure if those will be on Discord, if they'll be on another social media platform, but we're going to be doing some of that. We're going to use YouTube more. So the podcast will be on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And by we, I mean Andrea's going to figure that out.
I'm going to do my best.
Yes. And we'll be posting some technique videos there too. So using YouTube more. I think whether or not we lean into TikTok will be to be determined based on how things go post-ban, right?
Yeah, we'll see.
If it left and then it came back. So I think there's some questions there about the ethics of TikTok. And otherwise, we've made a Substack.
Yes.
So a newsletter, essentially. And it actually relates to the topic today, and a topic that just came up a couple days ago when we were talking to a friend, and she said, I just feel bored with training. So we just released a Substack, and it's on what do you do when you feel bored with training. So today we're talking about tips for blue belts, but one of the things is blue belt blues, and I think this person's kind of in the midst of that. So that was inspired by that, and you should look at that and subscribe to it. And then finally, we are on Blue Sky Social.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're not just like shutting off all the other platforms. Instagram is, for better or worse, still the main jiu-jitsu social media platform. It's where most people are. So we're not leaving right now. But we are just starting to, again, explore and consider what we want to do going forward.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's cool to check these new things out and kind of figure it out.
I think it's really fun, too, because it's not just throwing the same content onto every platform, which is one of the things I always hated about like Threads and X compared to Instagram, compared to Facebook, is I felt like I would make content for Instagram and just put it on all the others. But now the current situation is like they're different platforms with different purposes. So, Instagram is very visual. YouTube is video, so it's going to be great for technique. Same with TikTok, right? So it's very visual in that regard. And then for longer formats, I am a writer. So like the idea of doing a newsletter is really fun. And then Discord's a community. These are all completely different platforms. So it's not just duplicating the same information in multiple places. So that's my pitch for joining us in multiple places is you will find different content in all of those places.
Yeah. And you'll be kind of growing with us when it comes to using these social media outlets, as I do not know a whole lot about posting on YouTube and or other social medias really at all. So
Andrea does none of it.
No, I don't do the social media.
Just the podcast editor.
Yeah. So
just join us, and if it's a little rocky at times,
bear with us.
but I think it's going to be really good in the long term.
I think so too.
And give us feedback on what you like and don't like with that. I think that's really important too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So
something new that occurred throughout our hiatus of
our unintentional hiatus.
Unintentional.
It was actually a while ago.
Yeah. Kelly got her purple belt.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's exciting.
So I'm not just a blue belt giving tips to blue belts. I am a brand new purple belt who's also unqualified to give tips to blue belts.
I would disagree with that, but
no, but actually I think that's a good thing about this episode, right? Is that you have trained much longer than me. You're a more senior purple belt, closer to brown belt at this point, and I am just a baby purple belt. So we have very different perspectives.
Yeah.
I think we agree on a lot, but I think we bring something different to the table. So I think it's nice to kind of have that balance as we talk about tips for blue belts. So first thing is just surviving the blue belt. As I kind of alluded to in our introduction, it seems like there's often a big motivation dip for people, and a lot of people are actually known to quit it either entirely, or it's like they soft quit and they kind of just come and go and never, pick up momentum.
It's kind of like known across the jiu-jitsu community as if you stick through blue belt, you'll keep doing jiu-jitsu essentially.
Yeah.
But it's like a lot of people quit at blue belt. But why? Why is that? Right? And
yeah, why do you think that is, Andrea?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with people were like, I really want this belt. I want to get to blue belt.
Their end goal.
Yeah, it was where they were thinking, and once you hit your end goal, then it's over, right?
I think there's something about no one wanting to be the bottom of the ladder or like the newest person. It's a little like dog packs. Like sometimes people think it's mostly dogs fighting to be alpha, but it's actually like dogs fighting to not be at the bottom of the pack, to be bottom bitch essentially. But I think it can be like that for humans too, is like people just don't want to be brand new at something. And so it's like, instead of the goal being, I want to master this or I want to be black belt, because that seems so far away, it's really like, I just want to get a blue belt so I'm not a white belt anymore.
Yeah. And then you hit that and you're done.
And you're like, achieved. I also think, as we talked about earlier, people get bored. I mean, it definitely happened to me.
Yeah.
There was definitely a point. It was funny because I had a friend the other day say, I'm just tired of doing an armbar over and over again in class.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling that way too, because it's like, understandably, your class settings are a fundamentals curriculum typically, right? And so you are going to just, especially if you're training a lot, like repeat curriculum. And we know and both agree that that's great.
Yeah, no, it's
right?
great to have a fundamental game.
And it's great to continue to go through it, right? Like in terms of curriculum, and pick up different details at different times. You can train for many, many years. I always really appreciated one of our friends, Wasim, who's a black belt, who would always ask questions in class.
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
even if it was a lower belt teaching.
Yeah.
He would always ask questions because there's always a detail you can pick up. So like that's a good attitude to have, but I feel like it would be lying to say that no one has ever felt that like, oh my God, we're doing this thing again.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just happens. It's so normal. And again, we have like a whole Substack that we did on like how to avoid some of that. But I do think boredom is a big factor too for blue belts.
So I think we would both agree this is kind of the time that you would want to show up and be consistent. And that's consistency over intensity, and showing up just kind of when you're not feeling like it.
Yeah, I think that actually just on Beauty and the Gi, the podcast, AJ talked about showing up, when you're injured, for example, just to maintain routine. I think that can be really powerful when you're feeling bored too, is that you just, even if you're maybe getting burnt out or you feel like you're overtraining and you need to cut back, that's fine. But just not avoiding the gym entirely, and perhaps saying, okay, I'm getting a little like overwhelmed or whatever. I got really burnt out kind of. The other thing that happens too is like you have that push when you get to 4 stripes to like get to the next belt.
Yeah.
And then you get it and it's like, it's not just you're like, oh, that's done, I don't care, but you've probably maybe gotten a little burnt out
exhausted yourself.
Yeah, doing that push. So maybe you just show up twice a week or you show up 3 times a week or whatever it is. But even if you're not training really intensely, just have that consistency and that pattern and show up and treat it kind of like a job. I hate to say that because, it's supposed to be fun, but at times I think you do have to treat training like it's a job.
I would agree with that completely.
So I think another big thing about surviving the blue belt blues is ego in comparison, because it's often said that blue belt is the deepest belt. It's the one that people are at the longest. And not that with every belt, there's not a big difference between someone just starting their journey with that belt and someone getting close to getting ranked up. But at blue belt, that seems to be, again, the deepest waters. So, in general, I guess with any belt, like, what are your thoughts on this belt where, you are expected to know some stuff, but you're not really an expert in jiu-jitsu yet.
Mm-hmm.
And, you should have a certain like fundamental knowledge to get a blue belt, but it's probably not going to be perfectly even.
Yeah.
You're still going to have things you're better at. How do you kind of like let go of that ego?
Yeah, it's kind of hard because you're right. It is known to be deeper waters. You have people who have had blue belts for 4 or 5 years versus brand new blue belt you just threw out there. So instead of ego, try to bring more curiosity in your jiu-jitsu. Ask, what can I learn from this role, even if I lose or if I get smashed? What's coming from it? And, just bring the curiousness, keep that alive versus trying to just win.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that anytime you like rank up in belt, there's always this pressure of like, I can't let someone who's like a lower belt than me
beat you,
beat me. And I understand this is easier said than done, but you have to kind of mentally get past that. And just understand it's still going to happen. I mean, can I share that you got swept? Can I share that in De La Hiva by like a white belt?
Yeah. I mean,
is that okay?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think that that's an important, like,
yeah, I get beat up by lower belts.
Yeah. She has a good De La Hiva.
She has a pretty good De La Hiva. She'll know who she is too.
Yeah. And I mean, and the same, I wasn't just calling you out. Like, I have those moments too. That was just like one that just happened that I just thought about. And that would be really easy just to like act like you had been letting her work, but like she actually swept you.
No, yeah, she's just good at it.
She's just good at it. And like, clearly there's a big difference overall in like your skill level. But I just think,
yeah, no, something I was going to ask, what did I do when we came home? What happened instead of me just sulking about it?
You asked what you needed to do to not get stuck in De La Hiva and how to break out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn from it.
Yeah.
I don't want to diminish what that person did. I'm just going to say her name, Lainey.
It was Lainey.
But like, she swept me.
She's technical as shit too.
Yeah, so I wanted to know. I brought curiosity to this equation and was trying to figure out what I needed to do for next time.
I just think that's how you get better too. And so I'm mentioning that because you're a purple belt, but I think that there's the biggest like statistical likelihood of that happening at blue belt, again, because of like the diversity of the belt and like how deep the waters are. And it's so easy to feel like, well, I'm a blue belt now, I can't have a white belt beat me, or I need to even be beating the crap out of the other blue belts. Right. And that's not always going to be the case. And I think sometimes we say things like, maybe that person got swept, but you don't know what they're working on. And like, sometimes that's true, but also like lower belts are just capable of being better at something than you. It's not always that they just caught you in something. It's not always just an accident. It's like we are really, I think, being disrespectful to lower belts by assuming that they can't be intelligent and good at what they do and have like very specific things that they're skilled at.
Yeah, I think in my brain, the way I see it is any day anyone can beat my jiu-jitsu. It doesn't have to be someone higher ranked than me. It doesn't have to be someone the same rank as me.
If they're better at that specific thing than you,
yeah,
they could be a lower belt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, everyone has a really specific game, so it's like silly to assume that they can't do that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And by the way, Lainey is a 1-stripe white belt and she swept me. I am a 2-stripe purple belt. So I am just saying it is okay for those things to happen.
Thank you for sharing that, for allowing me to share that.
Of course, yeah.
I think it's really important for people to hear that.
Yeah.
So I think another thing that you can do too that helps with the blue belt blues is setting goals to stay engaged. So I'm really big on this, like having really small specific goals, and they can be kind of like in part seasonal, and sometimes they're like weekly and sometimes they're day to day. So, it can be things like improving guard attention, hitting one submission consistently. It could be even just like attending class 3 times a week. and also focusing on the long game. You're trying to build a foundation for your jiu-jitsu, not just trying to collect stripes.
Yes, no, exactly. And I think you're right on both of those.
All right, let's talk about some practical tips for blue belts, things that blue belts can actually implement.
Okay.
So one thing that I thought was really big for me is filling in gaps in your fundamentals and not hyper specializing. And this is like a little bit tricky because I think at the end of the day, jiu-jitsu is supposed to be fun and you should chase what you love.
Yes.
And you don't want to become bored with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand, recognize, and appreciate that. At the same time, I think that one thing that has helped me improve the fastest, and I have lots and lots of things that I suck at, but a thing I'm good at generally is like knowing what I don't know and knowing what I know and having like a decent amount of confidence with that.
That is a skill that I appreciate about you.
Oh, and not everyone has that, and I understand that, but it's I sometimes people think I'm just like self-deprecating with my jiu-jitsu, and it's not that. I actually have a good amount of confidence in what I'm good at. It's just I tend to focus on the things that I need to improve because I'm not worried as much about
what you're good at,
inflating my ego with like the things I'm good at. So I'm always kind of hyper focused on my weaknesses for a good intention for improving those things. So when I got my blue belt, I really said, okay, I have spent a lot of time in guard. I did not have meaningful opportunities to really pass people's guard. They were either letting me work too much or my guard passing just sucked or whatever. And I don't have much of a top game.
Mm-hmm.
And my takedown sucked. I did some wrestling. I took some judo classes. I actually did about a year of both. And I just still didn't feel like my standing was good. So I made a decision my first full year of blue belt that I was really going to, anytime I was in no-gi, work standing, work takedowns, and always work top and passing. And in gi, I recognized that I submitted from bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And so my guard retention was above average probably. And my submissions from bottom were above average. My kazushi and my ability to off balance and sweep was subpar. And so like, that's just what I mean is, and those things are fundamental.
Yes,
like I really didn't have fundamental sweeps. I really didn't have fundamental takedowns. And my passing was not as good. So I think like that's a really big tip that I have is before you start to get into like really hyper specializing in things, I think that'll happen like later as you're nearing purple belt. For the new blue belts out there listening, think about your fundamentals because you probably are not perfectly even across the board just because you got a blue belt.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So that was the first thing I did. And then it was once I started to feel like those things were evening out a little bit more that I started to hyper specialize and I started to deep dive into the things that I thought would be like my long-term game. I'm like, this is what I want my jiu-jitsu to look like when I'm a purple belt and a brown belt and a black belt. But I didn't do that until I got much further into my blue belt.
And those are things not just that you thought would be good for your game, but are exciting to you. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So you're keeping it fun.
Well, and I will say like, it doesn't have to be not fun doing the fundamentals too.
Correct. Yes.
Because it's intellectually challenging. Like my favorite thing, I always say my favorite thing to do in jiu-jitsu is actually passing. I love passing the guard. I think it's very intellectually challenging. And so it actually is fun. I don't super love sweeping and coming on top. I love sweeping, coming on top, and passing, but I don't find like setting up sweeps particularly interesting to me. I don't know why. I don't know. So it's like, you also, as you're kind of like working on filling out those fundamentals, you can try to like make it fun and still make it a game, even if it's not like the sexiest thing in the world, even if it is just a guard pass.
Yeah.
Make the best of it.
Another practical tip would be drilling with purpose. So, when you are learning fundamental technique or any sort of technique, drill it to learn it and not just do the motions.
And not talk to your partner the entire time.
Yeah. So something that we kind of focus on when we're drilling together is not speaking.
And if we are, it is about the thing we're doing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
But this just keeps us focused on drilling and the intention of drilling and understanding the drill.
So I'm going to start trying to do this to my class because I'm now teaching a regular Friday class again. And I hope that they don't hate me because it's not meant to be like really harsh or a ball buster. But Jacob Clark, who is definitely not a ball buster when he teaches at all, He always says, I want you to try the thing like 4 or 5 times without asking your partner a question.
Yeah.
Don't talk to each other. Just do it. It's why when I teach, I also will sometimes actually not watch the first couple repetitions that people do. And if they're new to my teaching, I'll say like, hey, I'm not super unengaged. I just don't want to stare at you, because like that's also uncomfortable too when the instructor's just like staring at you and you have to perform and you're not really sure of what you're doing. So I try to like let my students do a couple reps without me staring them down, because I also don't want to correct them before they've had an opportunity to correct themselves. There's nothing more frustrating than like you're trying to work through something and someone comes over and is like, no, 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 your foot goes there. And you're like, if you would have given me 2 seconds, I would have figured that out. And if you're able to figure it out on your own, it's a better form of learning. So to come back to kind of like our point, drilling with purpose, you know, when you're drilling, not talking to your partner, not instructing your partner if your partner's the one doing the move, not correcting them, like take the training time seriously and really drill very intentionally, try to work through the thing. And then if you are consistently failing, don't even ask your partner, ask an instructor, unless your partner's like a brown or black, like a higher belt.
Right.
But if your partner's a blue belt, a white belt, maybe ask the instructor. Maybe even some purple belt, like really like kind of ask the instructor instead, but take that drilling time super, super seriously.
Yeah,
it's valuable.
I'm actually going to do a little side note as well, just for people to think about, is you also don't know how much time people can actually put into the gym. So taking the drilling seriously is important. Like if I can only come to the gym twice a week, I want my drilling time to be taken. So be a good partner in that sense too.
Yeah. It's also why I don't love pairs of 3, because I'll always be in a pair of 3 if someone needs a partner, but I don't want the same person to always be paired up in a pair of 3 because it's less time each individual person gets drilling. So another thing, like when I teach class, is if it's not even, you're always there as my uke, you will go and partner with someone so that we don't have a group of 3 if we can avoid it. Sometimes you can't avoid it, and that's also fine. But try to make sure that you're not always the person that's in the group of 3. Some people will default to it because they like it. They're social butterflies, but be a little bit more selfish with your training and be the good partner, and sometimes join the group of 3. Don't do it every time. Yeah. I've definitely called out some of my friends for that, who've been like trying to push to the next belt level. And I've said, hey, I see you're always in the group of 3. I see you're like sometimes not being like assertive with making sure you're getting rounds in. You're the odd man out, like, if we're uneven. Be a little bit more selfish with your training, and sometimes be the person that has to sit out, sure, because like we have to be fair, but try to kind of be a little bit more intentional.
Yeah.
I think also becoming more offensive at blue belt, like not just getting smashed, trying to attack more, that sort of thing is probably just generally and then, of course, you can't like forget defense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important as well.
But just like starting to kind of work towards attacking more and less like recovery and escapes and like that sort of thing. And I don't know.
Yeah. Another one being managing injuries and recovery.
I think this is like the most important tip for blue belts.
Yeah. It's something.
Blue belts is like, that belt is where people tear their bodies apart. I did too. Yeah.
Yeah. So just take care of yourself.
I really didn't learn until I was much closer to purple belt how to balance my training. And then I also think this is kind of goes in line with the first thing I said, but, balancing, honing your specific game against exploration to, focus on fundamentals and like making sure your fundamentals are rounded out. Also, focus on your game, but be willing to explore your game and things that could be beneficial for your game. So if you're competing, and I'm a big believer in competition, and you are too.
Yes, I am.
It can help to a certain degree with honing in on your specific game, but it can actually have a hindering effect against exploring, right? Yeah. Because if you're competing too much, like people who compete 365 days out of the year, they're constantly like in camps, they're probably not acquiring new skills at the same rate as someone who is not competing and has that flexibility and ability to be explorative. they're more likely to just like continually focus on their A game. So I think a mixture of both, and maybe competition seasons are more beneficial to your jiu-jitsu. And it was something I talked to Kendall Roosing about one time too, because that was one of my questions, is like, you know, how, and it was at blue belt specifically, how do you do that? And, you know, we talked about that, like, and the answer was seasons, is that you have to have seasons for both. And if you are just constantly competing, you are going to be neglectful of that exploration of jiu-jitsu and that expansion of skill.
Yeah.
I don't know. And she's a world-class, you know, black belt. So
What does she know?
what does she know? All right. Let's talk about some things that we wish that we had known as blue belts looking back. As a purple belt of a couple months now.
Right.
Yeah. I know so much.
So what I would say is competing doesn't change a whole lot except for the size of your brackets. And so as you go up in rank, there are less and less people to compete against, especially as a woman. So I would say compete as much as you can at blue belt.
And for white belts listening too.
Yes, yeah.
White belt, you have even more opportunities.
Just keep competing.
Yeah.
You'll get so many different takes just on everything. I can't stress it enough that I think competing at lower ranks is important.
I think my biggest one, I agree with all of that with competing. I think my biggest one is, we kind of alluded to this, is that I wish I had known how to balance drilling and rolling better. I had the mentality that you just had to grind.
I did too.
And if there was an award for the most hours put in,
you wanted
the most classes, that was mine. Like, you know, I mean, really, because like I put a lot, and I still do, but look, the time I put in now looks different. I put so much time in. I was always in the gym. I was at every seminar. I was at every camp. And like, I rolled hard. I rolled as many rounds as I could. And I beat myself up a little bit at white belt, but I like damaged myself at blue belt.
Yeah.
I really, really did. And like I said, it wasn't until the end of blue belt that I realized that you can hit a point of diminishing returns. Like there was times where I was in morning class and then I'd be in evening class and it might be my third class of the day. And I'm like, I'm disassociating right now. Yeah. So like, I love being there because I love the vibes and my friends, but is this a good use of my training time? Would a better use of my training time been at home recovering, or maybe at home watching an instructional in a more like chill sort of atmosphere with like a Cosmo?
I like that.
You know what I mean? Like it doesn't even mean that you don't have to train, but maybe like it needs to look different. And that was really, really hard for me to learn. And when I actually, and the other piece of this is, I really wish at blue belt I had understood that it doesn't matter that your training be seen. This is another thing we were just talking about with that same friend who was kind of feeling bored, is that pressure, because this friend is also a high achiever. I am too. And when you're that sort of personality and you are working hard, you want your hard work to be recognized and for others to perceive it. And I get that. I feel that way. And like letting go of that has been really, really hard. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's forced. My main coach is not physically in the gym with me.
Yeah.
And so it's been freeing in a way. And so it doesn't matter. I used to feel like I had to always post on social media every time I wasn't at the gym and was like at a different gym, every time I was at a camp, every time I was at an open mat, because I felt, and this is self-pressure. No one was making me feel this pressure. Right. I just didn't want anyone to think I wasn't training constantly. And I was training constantly. And now I kind of just don't care. And I know there are a lot of people in jiu-jitsu period, but especially at blue belt, who really, really feel that way. And if you can just let go of it, I think it's very helpful and very powerful. Because I really don't think, I'm not saying hours in don't matter, but what actually really matters is the result of the hours in.
Yeah.
The way you roll, the amount of jiu-jitsu you know is actually what matters. If you put 100 hours in and you're not training seriously, or you're so burnt out that you're not learning, or you're so injured that you're not making good outcomes, that 100 hours is less valuable than if you put, 40 really intentional good hours in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a hard lesson to learn, but it's true. It's more like the quality of the time that you put in rather than just constant time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just wish my blue belt self had understood that. And I think I kind of started to understand it. And I do now, and I still struggle with it.
Well, I think it's important that your blue belt self didn't understand it, because we wouldn't have had good advice for our friend not too long ago.
Yes. Yeah, because I've lived it, so I very much understand it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I guess this could be anyone. I'm thinking our more senior blue belts here, the building a purple belt mindset kind of question. But this could be really anyone, because I don't think there's anything wrong with getting a promotion and saying, okay, how do I work toward the next one?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything I'm doing now, I feel like is my purple belt journey towards brown belt. It doesn't matter that I just got my purple belt. And so I don't think it's silly for a blue belt to come in and say, okay, how do I develop a purple belt mindset?
Yeah.
So I take it back. This is advice really for anyone. What do blue belts need to do to make that mental shift? Because I think that purple belt is a huge step up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's perceived to be that, right?
Yeah.
It's often considered a leadership
Role.
belt
Yeah.
or role in gyms. I don't know that everyone universally agrees with this, but I often hear it's called like the first advanced belt.
Yeah.
If you get a purple belt, statistically, you're much more likely to get to black belt. Again, a lot of people quit at blue, so that's not the truth or the same, like, right? So like blue belts who are like, I am getting my purple belt, I'm headed towards black belt. How do they change their mindset and start to move towards that purple belt?
All right. So a tip I would have for building that mindset is refining your bread and butter. So start finding techniques that feel really natural to you and what you want to do, but you don't need to chase every new move that you see.
So you're not just like trying every single thing you find on Instagram Reels.
No, build a strong base of understanding.
I also think I agree with that, connecting the dots a little bit better. So along those same lines, as you're starting to find techniques that feel natural to you and you're building your strong base, chaining techniques together. So, asking yourself, like, what is my follow-up if this thing fails? We were just doing a guard retention class and we talked about a similar kind of concept of like, how do I become more efficient in guard? And it was like, maybe the two guards that you flow between shouldn't be two completely unrelated guards, but consider like, if you're an open guard, the guards that are related to the one that you like playing. So, if you like playing spider, lasso has a lot of commonalities. That's a good option. You like playing De La Hiva, K-guard has a lot of commonalities with it. I mean, that's just guard, but connecting things together. What sweeps come off of those? What submissions, are options? And how can I just be constantly moving and oscillating between those options while I'm in a role?
Yeah, chaining the information. Asking for feedback. So when you're asking for feedback, be pretty specific in your requests and have your own sense of self-reflection. Higher belts are excited when you want to learn and not just trying to like beat them.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when people ask questions, they just say like, what do I need to work on?
And that's not specific enough.
It's actually not helpful at all. I understand why people ask it, and it's because they don't know how to be more specific and they might feel overwhelmed, but you're not going to get as good of advice as if you have like really specific questions or a thing that you want to work on. So yeah, as best as you're able to be really specific, whether it's your coach, higher belts, etc. I'd also say, start kind of like figuring out who is doing things similar to like what you want to do, because it's kind of good. And you're probably not going to have like one go-to person, but to have like different go-to people, and your jiu-jitsu will ultimately probably look like a combination of their jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm. Also knowing your coach's expectations and what their vision of the next belt level actually is.
Yes, because at the end of the day, that's actually the person promoting you, right? So your vision of what a purple belt isn't really relevant if it doesn't align with your coach's.
Mm-hmm. So an example of this would be like Chewy has said that by purple belt, he thinks that people should have some techniques that are black belt level already. And an example of this would be Chad Hardy. And triangles. Yes. Sorry. My brain just farted.
Completely forgot.
But yes.
But he's known for triangles.
He's known for triangles.
And even at purple belt. So with Jacob, his really wild expectation, no offense, Jacob, was 2 to 3 perfect techniques from every position.
Yeah.
Which, when I got my purple belt, knowing that was the expectation, made me feel pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
And he reminded me at the time that J-Rod was a purple belt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't expect to go fast.
And Pixley, right? But he's like, those are purple belts. I'm like, okay, cool.
That's your standard.
That's our standard. But, it feels good when you're on the other side. It just feels daunting in the moment. But it varies is kind of the point.
Yes.
For every belt. So having that conversation with your coach, and they might have like a general explanation, like we just kind of gave for what they expect for a purple belt or any belt level, but they may hopefully have really specific things for you to get to that point. And then I think if they don't, that's always a red flag.
I would agree.
And I think it's fine if they're like, hey, let me watch you roll a little bit so I can give you like more intentional and specific feedback. That's different than like they're just completely unable to answer the question.
Yeah.
That's not good.
So the last point we have for building the mindset is have a vision for your jiu-jitsu. So what do you want it to look like?
Yeah. And this is really, really tough. And it also goes back to the feeling that blue belts can have of boredom or like they're not learning. But as you get better and better, you are probably going to go into a territory in which your coach isn't an expert on every single thing that you're wanting. And that doesn't mean your coach sucks.
Yeah.
Your coach may be amazing, probably is amazing, but no person is an expert on absolutely everything.
That's true.
So I think that as you get further into blue belt, and this is part of what leads to some frustrations of like either feeling bored or like you're not learning new things, is that the fundamentals curriculum that you may be learning in a traditional classroom setting, in fact, might not be enough for you. And it can't be. And so then I think what happens is the person's like, something's wrong with my coach or this gym, or it's not a good fit for me. And that's not really it. It's that you have entered a certain point in your training where you do need more. You need outside things. I don't think anyone gets to black belt without learning outside of their coach and outside of the classroom setting. Mm-hmm. I think that works from white to blue, and it works for a certain amount of your blue belt career. But purple belts are self-studying, I would say predominantly. That's something I've been told frequently. And I used to always think that the purple belts were super unserious when you'd see them in the corner drilling something else.
Yeah.
And I kind of get it. And I always love when Risser's teaching, because Risser will say, hey, if you don't want to do this, actually work on this instead, or work on that thing you were doing instead. And I appreciate it. And it's not, and I think for the most part, we kind of are like, we appreciate that, but we go ahead and do the thing because we want to be respectful and we want to be like a good example for the other people in the class.
Yeah.
But I also appreciate it because it's kind of like that recognition of like, we have a certain amount of self-learning we're doing. That's what kind of happens as you get into purple belt. But yeah, you're going to have to recognize that there are going to be things that your coach isn't going to be able to teach you because they're not an expert. And as you get into purple belt territory, you are going to be more hyper specialized, and you might have to seek other coaches. You might have to do privates. You might have to go to seminars, watch instructionals, if that wasn't a thing you were already doing. Mm-hmm. And that should be a huge part of your learning, I think, at that point. And I don't know, but I assume that just continues to become more and more the case as you move through brown belt and into black belt as well. And kind of like an interesting point is, if you think about world-class black belt competitors, you see this all the time. They go to different gyms for periods of time. And it's not that they're gym hopping, but they do camps at different gyms.
Yes. Yeah. Like Adele Forterino.
Yeah. I mean, she was at Atto's HQ.
Yeah.
And then she's been with Lachlan for a while.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, and she obviously has her gym that she trains at in Australia too, which isn't Lachlan. She's not an absolute athlete.
Yeah.
You see this with a ton of world-class athletes.
Yeah.
BSM.
Fionn.
Yeah, Fionn. Like they're kind of all over the place at different times. And it's that you really can become stagnant. And I think that if your gym doesn't understand that, that might be an ego thing.
Yeah.
The idea that you could be a one-stop shop for every single person, particularly when they get more advanced, is really not realistic.
Yeah.
And so it kind of takes a village. And it doesn't mean that that gym is not great and you don't love and appreciate it, but you probably need more input.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
And that's not hurtful. That's not bad.
That's not bad at all. That's not bad at all. All right. I don't know. Anything else for our blue belts out there? Or white belts wanting to be blue belts, wanting to be purple belts?
I don't really have anything else besides just keep showing up. I think that's just important too.
I think that like of all the things we said, that's the most important is just keep showing up. And then my really wild tip is only do it if you like it.
Yeah, if you don't like it, then why the hell are you doing it?
I say that all the time in the podcast, but that's another thing too is I think the community is incredibly important, and I've met some of my best friends through jiu-jitsu, and I love them dearly. Oh, and my wife. But I say this all the time. We don't have to wear a gi and hang out at the gym. We could just go get a beer at Mashcraft next door.
Yeah.
If you don't actually love the training, that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's not for everyone. So, you know, I always say that as people are kind of struggling through the blue belt blues. And when I say that, typically the reaction is, no, I do really like it. And because I think people need to really think about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for some people, they kind of don't love it.
Yeah.
And that's okay too.
That is okay.
We can still be friends.
Yeah.
All right. So questions for each other.
Okay. I forgot that this was my question. All right. Was getting to your purple belt what you expected it to be? And by that, I'm asking like time-wise, coach-wise, all of those types of things.
I don't know how to answer this.
Mm-hmm.
No, because I started my blue belt at a completely different gym, switched gyms without actually even meaning to switch gyms. I meant to just add gyms.
Mm-hmm.
I was planning on splitting my time. And then baby made that really challenging. And your surgeries, you had 3 the year before last, made that challenging. And I also work with a coach who doesn't have a gym. He teaches at various gyms,
Mm-hmm.
You know, individual classes and does privates. So I just like my coaching roster changed several times throughout my journey. And I think aside from the fact that I miss the gym I got my blue belt at, that would be the only thing that would make it better. I think otherwise everything's changed for the best, right?
Yeah.
Like I get different things from different people, but it wasn't what I thought it would be, to answer that question. I wished it had happened a little faster because that had been a goal, because I was kind of I felt like my white to blue was a little slower than I had hoped.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to, but then I know saying that it was pretty fast,
Mm-hmm.
blue to purple. So I know a lot of people are probably rolling their eyes hearing that.
Yeah, but it's how you feel. Your feelings are valid.
Yeah, I just hoped it hadn't been, because it really ended up being like 5.5 years.
From white to
purple.
Yeah.
And that's not crazy.
Yeah.
Andrea's like, yeah, that's fucking not.
It's not that
She'll tell you
crazy.
her story in a second. But if you consider the amount of hours I put in,
Yeah, that's
and like
not even
in
funny.
good training, it feels more like it took me 10 years to get my purple. I don't know. Like that's probably not literally true, but it felt like a lifetime of work. I'm not mad. Like
No. Yeah.
like
yeah.
this isn't me being mad because like I would also, I don't want to have that situation. Maybe people are talking shit about it, but I don't think they are. Like, I don't want to ever be that person that gets promoted and someone's like, she trains at a McDojo or what the fuck,
Yeah.
you know? So like, also I would rather
Be overcooked.
I'd rather be overcooked. And I'm not saying I'm overcooked.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm saying I didn't hit my target.
I think that's fair.
My goal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I just hadn't answered that question. I tried to answer that diplomatically and honestly, but that felt rough to wade through. How did you feel like your journey went?
Well, it definitely changed because if you would have asked me in 2013, I thought I would have gotten all my belts in Bloomington and stayed at the same gym that I was in. But obviously, life didn't allot for that. So it took me a long time to progress in my belts, different coaches. It is not what I expected it to be.
Yeah. You had a couple slow promoters. I know you're not saying that. I'm saying that.
I'm not saying that.
It's true.
But yeah, so it took me almost 8 years to get my purple belt. So just to throw that out there.
Sorry.
No, you also spent more class time in the gym than I did.
Yeah.
So just different takes, different points of view.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you think you were going to meet someone who's actually more obsessed with jiu-jitsu than you?
No. And marry them? No. And have their kid? No. Life threw me a lot of curveballs.
Because I'll be like, do you want to drill this? And you're like, I guess if you want. Like,
I'm like, I really want to be playing Minecraft right now, but
literally.
but whatever you need.
And I'm like, let's try to drill. Yeah.
All right, your question for me.
I drag her along kicking and screaming.
It's true.
What's your advice for a new purple belt? Asking for me.
Oh, asking for you?
Yeah. New purple belt here.
I feel like I should be asking you for advice. You're just, I don't know. I don't have a good answer.
You've had your purple belt like 2.5 years.
I got my
3?
Yeah, I got my purple belt in
Wait, almost 3 years.
22?
Yeah, almost 3 years.
Yeah.
See, so I mean, you've had it 3 years longer than me. Is it don't have surgeries, don't break your ribs,
don't have a baby.
Don't have a baby.
Yeah, that's actually the advice. No, I really don't.
You broke my rib. I had a blue belt though.
I don't really know. I don't really have. I'll think about it, and maybe.
And you won't get an answer if you're listening to this podcast, but she'll get back with me.
I'll get back. Maybe it'll end up in a Substack or something.
Okay, we can put that in a Substack. All right. So we had one listener question.
Oh, okay.
You had no idea.
Nope.
No clue at all. And that question is, what would be your dream super fight? And I do not know if that means you personally.
Or like who you want to see fight.
Or matchup. So
for matchup, which is actually happening March 6th on UFC Invitational.
That's your dream one?
At least as of right now.
Okay.
Sofiane Davies and Adele Forterino are fighting against each other at the UFC Invitational, whatever they call that show. It's on UFC Fight Pass, but I think it's March 6th or something. But I'm pretty excited for that. As soon as I saw that it was announced a couple days ago, I was pretty hyped. A fight for me would be against you.
That's not that's some bullshit.
On a big stage.
Dear listener, the way I try to get Andrea to actually fight me all the time, we roll in the gym, obviously. We can roll at home, obviously. But I'm like, hey, No one else has signed up for this. IBJJF in Indianapolis. Why don't we just fight each other? I understand we have to pay money for it, but this could be fun.
It doesn't sound like fun.
Why?
Maybe if the listeners want me to, I'll fight you at the Indie Open.
Here is the thing. Andrea's like, I don't want to fight you and lose. Andrea is so terrifying.
That's not true.
When she competes, you're just going to... And the combination of you being a good competitor and the combination of me being like an absolutely horrible one, it would be just wild. Yet I still want to give it a go. Let's do it. I feel like you just called me out.
Well, what about you for this question? Sorry.
That's my dream fight is that you actually like Star Wars happens again. I say all of this and I'm talking such a big game, but I literally hate people watching me. That's why I roll so much better, because like no one's paying attention.
AJ set it up. Star Wars. Kelly and I
will get fucked up so bad so fast because I will instantly just fall apart. Are you going to pull guard?
Oh, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do. We'll just find out at Star Wars.
I'd be okay with you pulling guard. No gi.
No, it's in the gi. I don't know. No gi's fine. We'll see.
I can do gi. I just have like one in me. I can do the one. I can beat you for one fucking match, homie. I just don't have the grip strength to do multiple rounds.
We'll see.
Talk shit.
We'll see what happens.
Talk shit.
Anyway, Andrea, what do we have coming up?
Oh my gosh. What do we have coming up, Andrea?
So coming up, we actually have the Let's Roll Queer Grappling Camp, and that's in Fishers, Indiana, and that's April 4th through the 6th. And as Kelly mentioned earlier, we are 84% sold out.
I did not give that number, but that was close.
Ish.
Yes.
So if you want a spot, make sure you get it. And remember, we do have the pay as you go option, or pay what you can, is what I meant to say.
You sound like a car salesman or something.
I'm doing my best. So that is an option as well.
We didn't mention this, but we also, it's been on social media, have pre-sales for gis and rash guards.
Yes.
So just look at social media if you're interested in that.
Check it out.
We're getting to the end of the podcast. We're getting more unhinged.
Yes.
So Andrea, are you able to handle the where can you find us, since we've changed all of the places that we are located?
I'm going to do my best because I don't know the
exact... This is a quiz because I didn't write it down for her.
I don't know the exact handles for all these things, but I'm going to do my best.
Well, I think aside from Discord, they're all the same. Because Discord isn't a handle, it's just a link.
All right. So,
which you can find in our link tree in our bio on any of social media account.
So you can find, wait, you got to say the follow us. Where can people follow us?
I did.
Say it again.
Where can people follow us?
So people can find the podcast, lesrollradio.com, and at Les Roll Radio on TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, Substack, and you can check the link tree in the Discord.
And YouTube. You did really well.
And YouTube.
And technically we're still on Facebook, but that one's going to get phased out because fuck Meta.
Yes, we will be phasing that out.
All right. Where can people find us?
People can find me, Andrew Shenegi, at Shenegi A on Instagram, Blue Sky. I think those are the only social medias I have.
Are you on TikTok?
And TikTok.
And TikTok.
And YouTube.
You have a YouTube?
There's nothing on it, but yeah.
Okay.
I'm never going to shout that out again, but...
That was awkward.
And then you can find my beautiful wife, Kelly.
Where am I?
At Kelly Shenegi on Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok. I don't know.
That's it. I was just looking at you like you were missing one.
I didn't miss any. Guys, I'm amazing.
All right. You can also follow Bernie Shenegi at Bernardo the Sheltie on Instagram.
And he posts his very cute sister
Fifi on there too.
Yeah. I didn't know we were going to shout them out, or else I would have done it.
Well, I mean, I don't know. He was looking at me like he wanted me to.
Okay.
All right.
Till next time.
Bye.